being the best and doing the best. These words remind me of, or rather the text today reminded me of these words, where those who had seen Jesus' miracles and preachings and teachings said he has done everything well. What a compliment. I'm not sure any of us may deserve that compliment, but of course we are not Jesus Christ. He has done everything well. Being the best, doing the best. Just so happens that about 2 weeks ago or so, I was in a conversation just sitting at a Grizzlies baseball game, 2 seats down from our chaplain for the Grizzlies. They have a chaplain, they have worship services every week with both teams, and he happened to be speaking of a similar text to this that he was using in his meditation time for the service, or had used, I'm not sure which. And the phrase that he had was being the best and doing the best. So it's not original with me, but I remember that he said that. And what a wonderful theme and motto for us to follow. Being the best, doing the best. Jesus had said of him, he has done everything well. Kathy Rigby, a name you may or may not remember from some past decades. Kathy Rigby was an Olympic gymnast who competed in the 1972 Summer Olympics, but was hampered by an injury. Consequently, she did not win a medal. She was expected to medal. Before the games began, she prayed for strength to move through her routine without making a mistake. She performed well, but she did not medal. Emotionally, she was crushed. She joined her parents in the stands, ready for a good cry. "I'm sorry," she said. "I did my best." Her mother uttered 10 words that Kathy says she will never forget. Doing your best is more important than being first. Doing your best is more important than being first. Only one person can be the best, but every one of us can do our best. That is a wonderful motto for us to have, I believe. Being the best, doing the best. In today's gospel lesson, after Jesus had taught, healed, cast out demons, the people said, as I've read about him, he has done everything well. People were drawn to Jesus. People were inspired by Jesus. They saw in him a power and a purpose and a compassion beyond anything the average person ever possessed. He has done everything well. And they use the example right at the end of that phrase. He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak, giving an example. When people look at our lives, are they inspired to say, he, she has done everything well? I always like the phrase that I have seen on several of these signs that appear in some stained glass and in windows and so forth, and on little signboards. Strive for perfection that one can reach excellence. Strive for perfection that we can reach excellence. Giving our best means a radical commitment to doing the very best we know in everything we do. Pastor and author Warren Wiersbe tells of attending a concert by the noted composer, conductor John Rutter, a concert in which Rutter did something that surprised Wiersbe. John Rutter is a contemporary composer and director. He has written many, many choral works. Years ago at St. Paul UCC in Columbia, our choirs sang a lot of John Rutter. He was very contemporary. But what surprised Wiersbe, after the applause had ceased following a choral number, Rutter turned to the audience and said, "Do you mind if we do this one again? I think we can do better." Can you imagine how you felt in the choral group? Wiersbe said he was stunned, as was much of the audience. The first performance seemed excellent to him, but obviously the gifted conductor heard something the audience had missed. The choir sang the song again, says Wiersbe, and Mr. Rutter seemed pleased. John Rutter would not settle for anything but his best. That's true of people who are outstanding in any field. In God's little devotional book for the class of 2000, there is a story about Jack Katz. Jack Katz was a football lineman of the early 1960s on the University of Florida football team. The team was in a practice session running wind sprints for conditioning. Katz had proven himself to be the fastest lineman on the team, but he wanted to be the very best he could be. Katz went to his coach and asked if he might be allowed to run sprints with the faster and smaller running backs. Permission was granted. For the next several days, Katz finished last in every race with the running backs. The coach went to Katz to ask if he wouldn't rather go back to running against the other linemen rather than lose every race against the running backs. Katz responded, "I'm not out there to outrun the linemen. I already know I can't do that. I'm here to learn how to run faster, and I'm losing by a little less every day." Giving our best means a commitment to doing our best. And it just doesn't, I suppose we could say, come naturally. It takes practice. And it takes working with people who are better than ourselves. I received sort of a backwards but a wonderful compliment on an occasion, and that was Pastor Bill surrounds himself with very competent people. Very important to surround yourself with people who are more competent than you are. Of course, it might make you look good, yes, but the important thing is that you have others who are raising you up, giving you a challenge, but supporting you. The late motivational speaker and somewhat of a comedian, Zig Ziglar, tells a story about the explorer, soldier, and writer Sir Walter Raleigh. Raleigh attended a prestigious boarding school. He was an excellent student and wanted to be number one in his class. However, there was a student always who finished ahead of him. He determined to discover what this other boy's secret was. So each night, when Raleigh prepared for bed, he looked across the grounds of the other dormitory that separated his dormant room from the others and from his competitor, and noticed that his rival's candles were still burning, and he was getting ready to go to bed. One night, he noticed that the other boy studied about 15 minutes longer than he did. After that, Sir Walter Raleigh studied an extra 20 minutes every night. At the end of the year, he was the number one student. A passion burned within Sir Walter Raleigh to be his very best. Think about our commitment to Christ. You and I are not saved by our works. We know that our salvation comes by grace through faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. We are saved by that faith. But still, I wonder if we will not someday stand before the throne of God on Judgment Day and be asked that most terrifying of all questions: did you do your best? We are not Jesus. We're not perfect. We're not going to do everything well, but we can do our best. Nevertheless, the call to follow Jesus Christ is a call to be the very best we can be. The call to follow Christ is a call to be the most loving human being possible. Accepting. We are too quick to judge, too slow to walk in another's shoes, too quick to decide that it's better to be like me than to be like another. But you know what? It's not. To be as loving as humanly possible is what we're called to be. In his book, The Road to Character, the journalist David Brooks notes most people cultivate two sets of virtues. Interestingly enough, he had these two sets of virtues. Brooks called one resume virtues, the other eulogy virtues. The resume virtues, Brooks said, are the skills you bring to the marketplace. These are the virtues we list on our resumes. These are the virtues we want our boss to know about. But the eulogy virtues are the ones talked about at our funerals. Were we kind, brave, honest, faithful? Did we treat others well, our family, our friends, and those unknown to us? We know the eulogy virtues are more important than the resume virtues, but oftentimes, Brooks said, our schools and cultures emphasize the resume virtues. But many of us are clearer on how to build an external character, but we must be clear on how to build an inner character. Jesus was not motivated by resume virtues. Jesus lived in the Father's will. Jesus lived for the purposes of God. Following Christ is modeling ourselves after Christ. That reminds me of that phrase, I suppose it's been 25 years ago. We had bracelets and signs that had those letters W-W-J-D. WWJD. What would Jesus do? Some of us remember that phrase. How would Jesus approach the needs and challenges of this world? Our workplaces, our families, our priorities. People were inspired, as our text denotes today, by his character and his goals and doing the will of his Father. Such a giving spirit, heart, and life that he gave of himself that we might know God's love and salvation. In 1950, Father Emil Capone, a Roman Catholic priest from a Kansas farming village, served as an army chaplain to American troops fighting in the Korean War conflict. Father Capone was known among the soldiers for his bravery. He went out on the battlefield unarmed to care for wounded soldiers. On November 1st, 1950, a regiment of Chinese soldiers attacked the American forces at Unsan. It became clear that the American forces and soldiers were significantly outnumbered. According to official U.S. Army records, facing annihilation, the able-bodied men were ordered to evacuate. However, Chaplain Capone, fully aware of his certain capture, elected to stay behind with the wounded. Father Capone and the other captured soldiers were forced to march 60 miles to a Chinese prison camp. Father Capone carried a wounded soldier for much of that way on his back. Life in the prison camp was extremely harsh, but Father Capone encouraged the men to find hope, to find courage in every situation. He tended to the sick, he stole food for the starving, he counseled the discouraged. In May 1951, Father Capone became ill and was sent to the prison camp hospital. Not long before he died there, he offered his forgiveness to his Chinese captors and asked for their forgiveness in return. He died shortly afterwards. 2 years later, when the surviving American soldiers were liberated from the prison camp, they shared stories of Father Capone's courage, love, and sacrifice, and how his example had inspired them to persevere in the face of extraordinary, overwhelming trials. In the year 2012, not that long ago, he was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and fearlessness in action above and beyond the call of duty. Father Capone was an example of a life lived to the very best. It matters a great deal who we pattern our lives after. There is only one who achieves excellence in every area of life. That was Jesus of Nazareth. He lived well, he taught well, he died. But he rose triumphantly and lives with us and among us forever. Jesus calls upon us to set lofty goals, to seek excellence in every area of our lives. When God the Father asks us on Judgment Day, did you do your best? If God's Spirit lives within us, we can answer, I have given more than I thought possible. I have given the best to the world and to my Master. Thanks be to God for gifting us in this extraordinarily wonderful way. Amen.